Reagan Youth was one of the best New York punk bands.
We are the sons of Reagan Howe. Gonna kill a bacon doll. Rides of sacred mission. Started Inquisition.
They've reformed over the past few years. You know, it's hard to you know, reform when the main, you know, the singer dude, the main idea guy is gone. But the guitarist Paul, the great Al Pike, the bassist, he's a legend in the New York hardcore. They opened up at the Dead Kennedys one time at the World.
Were you there?
Sure. There was, and they were doing the whole MC5 thing. Brothers and sisters, it takes about 5 minutes to testify, you know.
We're going to do USA next. On that we've been doing for a couple of years now, and I kind of think by this time it's not a trend and it ain't a pose. It's true belief in what we consider freedom.
They tour with the Dead Kennedys?
No, they did play L.A. I have that on video, and they were well received. The record probably sold better in L.A. than it did here in New York. The New York scene was it wasn't a heck of a lot of people. There was more people. There was the punk rock scene in California was the big scene, the dominant scene, and New York. You had L.A., you had D.C., you had Boston, and New York was like on the shit list. And it didn't take until the late '80s for that New York hardcore scene to take off.
United States of Anarchy. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
There were good bands in the early '80s, but I would say it was a few thousand people in the scene, and like any of these scenes, people came and went. In fact, it got pretty hard in the mid '80s with a lot of the squatter stuff. You had the different factions, you know, your hippie squatters and your skin squatters. The hippie squatters were mainly kids from the suburbs who had enough money and they were just doing that. And the
lifestyle.
The skin squatters it was their lifestyle because they didn't have any place to go.
Were they mainly skinheads? Like when you say skin squatters?
That's what it became.
Or were they just kind of punk squatters?
They became skin squatters. It became hard lifestyle.
Heavy drugs.
Not a little bit in the skin scene, but obviously not as much. A lot of them didn't even have any money, more alcohol than anything else. You know, why spend the money on that? Maybe they'd spend the money on the beer. They'd barely get money on the beer because they would be honestly nasty to most people.
Like online when the New York punk scene started.
I was here in the burbs.
Right.
In White Plains? You were here?
In Yonkers. And I was living in basements. I lived that kind of lifestyle up in the burbs because I didn't want to be part of that. I wanted to be different in an area where it sticks in people's spaces. There it doesn't really stick in people's spaces.
Because everyone's doing it.
Everyone's right. It's conformist. So
And your record store was in Yonkers?
yeah, I ran a store in Yonkers. That was Mad Platters. I started working there in '83. Paul from Sheer Terror was the first employee. Paul went to high school together, and they're big band, one of the biggest New York bands, still consistently one of the best of the New York, if not the best of the New York punk hardcore bands. I think they're more rock and roll than many of the other bands. I think Paul's sensibility about rock and roll is a lot wider than people give him credit for. But he goes along with the shtick well. So Paul worked for one day at Mad Matters. Couldn't take the man. That was literally his quote. Couldn't take the man.
After one day.
After one day.
And was the man you?
No.
No.
That was Joel, and
I'm not
so I was
man.
next in line, and I worked there. I lived in basements all throughout Westchester. Every few months moving. I worked at Blinker Bob's. Don't hold that against me. You know, you could say whatever you want about Bob. Bob knew to get the best people to work for him. You know, I mean, like any of these stores, it'd be a revolving door. But as strange as it is to say, there's no New Yorker like Bob. He's the quintessential. To be in the store was again a scene out of like a New York movie, where at one moment you love the guy and the next moment you want to smack him. You know, best scene was me and Bob, because somebody else couldn't work, on a Friday night in the middle of the summer with all the tourists, and Bob just standing there at the register ordering me around. There's 20 people on the other side of the counter that I'm helping to get stuff for. And I just said, fuck it! Threw all the shit up, and I threw like 20, 30 records up in the air. They flittered all around, and I said, come on, Bob, right now, right now. And people were like aghast. And he took a piece of plastic, one of the plastic record covers, and he went, eh. Everybody died laughing, because he knew that he was caught. If I really was pissed, I could have nailed him.
Right.
But how to diffuse it was, he played the Pussy sold records to P. Diddy, like in like 93 there, like staying at night after we closed to play some shit, because he's had money, you know. He's like, I'll spend $500. Let's go through stuff. Give me a few hours. Right, no problem. Keep going.
You sold them Diana Ross. I'm coming out.
When did digging like first come in? You know, like when did people realize that they could come into the record store and start buying old breaks to sample? I mean,
it started with like
86.
86.
Well, people were digging in like the early 80s, like all the DJs were, you know, playing breaks and stuff. Not production-wise, 86 though. Right?
It's yes, I would say definitely. It's I would have to say my feeling is, believe it or not, Paul's Boutique had between PE,
Dust Brothers,
between PE and Paul's Boutique. At the time that Paul's Boutique came out, that record was not. It didn't hit. It took quite a while. It wasn't a hit record like Still. Capitol was not happy with the sales of it, so they released a series of singles like Shadrach, and they didn't go. So now that's why those 12 inches are rare, right? They're hard to find, and there are special promo mixes on those.
Right.
They're super rare.
It seriously was.
They were ahead of the curve.
It was the best produced album. It was awesome.
Right. Obviously, I thought so, but it wasn't keeping with what was happening at the time. Things like Mars, where it had to be direct beats, right? It had to be that Mars, pump up the volume, you know, that kind of thing. Not where it had this fuzzy sound to it.
everything ahead of the curve doesn't really do well in the market, you know.
Right. That's the way it's always been. Yep. And it takes a while for people. That's where I'm really interested in this is as art. This is my thing. That Dada thing.
Sure.
I got into the punk rock kind of stuff and the Dada stuff because they were all influenced around the same time. Like the Sex Pistols, Graphics. Not really a big fan of the music. Okay, but all that Jamie Reed, like cut up collage kind of stuff, and seeing the fanzines and that kind of stuff.
The culture of it
The
that
culture
surrounds
that
it.
came from like what they call the Dada movement.
Sure.
That's from, 1915, in reaction to the First World War. This whole thing about music and being ahead of the curve, it's all art. And there's a bit of time travel, kind of futuristic time travel. I said that in that article, that you can place yourself back in these eras when these records are made, and that doesn't mean just like when the record was made. That means the culture around it, why the band did it, who it was marketed to. My wife and I were talking about Otis Redding. I had this at my store, $40. Now it went up to $100. I had it on the site since 2007, and she's like, "Well, why is it rare?" I'm like, "Because people bought the 45s. The teenage kids at the time didn't have the money for the albums, so the soul albums are from that period are rare. Soul albums started to take off in the early 70s, mainly to the Stevie Wonder and that kind of thing. It became an album market following rock and roll albums. So soul albums from the early 60s are rare, because the marketing, the albums were marketed mainly for adults. That's why there's so many Herb Alpert records.
Yeah, it's funny you say that too, because also the reason why 45s are rare is because bands that didn't release an LP only released a 45.
Yeah.
So it's like goes both ways.
Yes. Marketing. It comes down to marketing. And the weird thing about a lot of this, why New York is one of these centers, is because of, believe it or not, what they call the Brill Building, right? Marketing. The records would get pressed in maybe Nashville. Many of them got pressed in Nashville while the recorder sending the record here for it to get listened to by marketers in either record companies or independent agents, that kind of thing. Independent record jockey types that would send the marketing out. So that's why there's a lot of records here because of that. So the 45, I bought loads of collections of just promo records. You're not even sure if the records actually got released. They would just get pressed to literally hold the copyright of the song in case it became popular by somebody else. That's a big part of this business in the major industry. Is they'll go through these periods when if there's an independent record phenomena, whether it be soul, punk, took a while for punk, what they called the grunge. When these things eventually hit, many of the major labels went out and overbought artists for more than anything else to keep them away from the independent companies.
They shelf them.
So it's a weird business it's a weird business that we're in. There's a lot of people that are in it for the love, but it's a business and it can be brutal. It's fun. It's a hobby. Once it's in your blood, it's blood.
I just go to bed at night like thinking about looking through records sometimes.
Yes, it's an obsession. It's a fucking obsession.
Collecting records not only is for love, but I think all of us that do collect records have somewhat of a mental thing, like a problem. Like it might be a disease, like with any collector.
Yes. It's a way to rationalize,
right.
A way to affirm. The knowledge thing is an affirmation, right? And when you meet people that are also very deeply involved, you have a lot of respect for that. I think it's good to have that respect. There's a competitiveness, as with anything else, but there's hey, we're both in this, and then when we get the people that are out of our inner circle, we like the affirmation that we know things, and we have this secret knowledge, know. This one, have you ever heard of this? P-Vert? I haven't listened to this yet.
No.
P-Vert. Stickball.
Stickball.
And on the other side, F Me Forever, Connie Lingus. Let's put it on.
You've never listened to this.
This is from this collection. This was from this collection. There were like half a dozen records. And one of them was this one, classic rock stuff. And
there's no year on that?
No, and I haven't looked it up. I have no idea what it is. We're just gonna
see how it sounds first.
See how it sounds first. These can usually be kind of goofy, like recorded by by a band that's in the like a studio, like they hand them off to some guy writes the song and hands it off to studio lackeys. That's what on the back of the magazines they'll say you can be a lyricist.
Oh yeah,
right. Those are, I love a lot of those.
So is this stickball?
Yeah.
I would dig to be able to go back to the things when I was just a little kid.
It sounds like one of those, like a song poem record.
And I'd like to return to all the things.
Because I'm thinking,
stickball,
I could
basketball,
I think it probably is
in the
just
streets.
When it first started with the organ, it sounded like maybe a garage tune or like a.
Those days, like that was out of sight, man. You know, and you met a little girl and she was your love, you know.
Oh,
and it was so out of sight. You kind of ran down the street together. I mean, love was love. It was there, man. It was sharing popcorn and grooving with ice cream. Because love between two people, man, it's just out of sight. But let me say this.
We're waiting for
love
the
between
we're waiting for the joke.
Yeah.
Now that's heavy.
He was talking about
That could be
stickball.
groove, especially if one of those people is me. Dig it? Because you should get together, everybody. Get in your bed. You grab her tit and you kiss her on the back of her fucking neck. And you say, suck, 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 because the world is built on sucking. And you take two pencils, stick them in her ears, and pull them down to you and say, eat me, baby, because the Lord said, let me hear from you, brother Vinny. Good God Almighty, let me hold you, let me suck your cock, and then take the Lord and say, good God.
I'm YouTubing this.
There's a whole lot more to do in this world. Fuck around with your tail though.